Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and on this show, we've done a lot with addiction recovery and treatment. I've interviewed plenty of people who are addicted themselves. I've interviewed people who are working with different ways to cure substance abuse, from different medications to laser acupuncture to just fitness and the role it plays. And so, today, we're going to take a different angle. We're going to look at the connection between recovery and help from third-party programs, whatever that may be, and to those people who are actually addicted and their loved ones, aka marketing. Our biggest focus today being how do we reach the youth and what role does social media play, especially because we know it's no secret that most of the people I've interviewed on my show, their addiction started in their teenage years, some of them even younger than that, as young as 12 years old. So, how do we reach these teens and their parents and their mentors to get them help before it's too late, before it gets worse? And so, we're going to be exploring that today, along with just addiction support in general with Ms. Sarah Buckler. So great to have you here to cover this subject. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yes. Thank you so much for having me today, Mr. Whiskey. It's great to be here and to meet you. So a little bit about me. Let's see, I am in recovery. I've been in recovery for almost 12 years. I'm grateful to be in recovery. It's definitely been an just amazing experience. It's such a wonderful community to be in. And I have been in the recovery world, working in it for a little over 10 years and just exploring like evidence-based practices and learning that as the world is evolving with different substances and things like that, that it's not a one size fits all approach that we need to take and really look at individuals and their treatment plans very individualized and just treat them with dignity and respect. And so that's been really a great practice that I've brought into marketing. And yeah, I'm a mother and a wife and definitely a Christian too. So I lead with that in the work that I do.
Right. So when you mentioned you've been in recovery, can you tell us a little bit about that journey from start to now, kind of some of
Yeah.
the struggles you faced that have shaped you?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, my addiction began at 18 in high school. So when we're talking about adolescence and even just teenage years, that's when my journey started. And it was really a lot about just the people that I was around and peer pressure. And so that's a lot of what happens with adolescence and just not knowing my place and where I fit in the world. And so that's where I started. I started an outpatient program and then actually went through seven different programs and not all of them stuck. And I left programs, absconded, and APA'd is what we call it, left against professional advice a couple times, and just really had a hard time understanding and finding the support that I needed. And then that last time of my recovery journey, this how I came to 12 years was really just understanding what the community was about and really getting into like Alcoholics Anonymous and NA and really diving deep and understanding that lifelong journey and commitment that I needed and understanding transformation as a whole. And so, yeah, that's really the gist of it. But it was a long journey from that to get to that 12 years because I had lots of stints of recovery that didn't stick, but I just never gave up. And my family was there with me on the journey the whole time. And also, I will say though, being that I work in recovery is a huge part of it. Helping other people is really a great piece of the recovery um, journey for me because I'm helping people that and giving back. And doing for others what was done for me. And so that's really important to me and staying connected to the recovery community. I know I've said that multiple times, but I just want to emphasize how important that is and that strong focus for recovery, people in recovery.
For sure, I completely
Yeah,
agree because a lot of people who relapsed, it was when they were alone or isolated, right? So that community is important for accountability. And then I agree just with me, I've never been addicted, but I come from a family of addiction, multiple
absolutely.
generations. And every time if I ever have any thoughts of drinking or that kind of stuff in a
Yeah.
negative manner, it helps thinking about all the people who have been on my show, not just the expectation that I have to me as the host and as someone who works in recovery, but also just knowing some of the things they've been through and some of the terrible, terrible things they've been through and the way it affected their loved ones, which is part of I know that I never want to affect people the way that some of the people in my family who are addicted have affected others. And so being constantly connected with people who are in recovery or recovered, it's extremely
Right.
helpful. Like you said, I think that community aspect is so important. Even when you've been, like in your case, 12 years, right? I know people who go to AA in their 70s and they've been sober for 30, 40 years, but it's about that community aspect being and
The
also
connection.
relating to people and being there as a source for them as much as they are for you. So I think that's important. And you mentioned, the teenage years, and
Hmm.
it's hard because we you can put negative influences more easily. And what I mean by that is like if you made a rap song about doing drugs or alcohol and you made one
Yeah.
about addiction recovery, right? That's not to say both won't be successful, but one is going to get pushed much further. I was actually having a conversation this morning about this actually because I was scrolling through social media and I saw there's a lot of AI generated videos nowadays. Some of them are just completely messed up. And I saw one about this AI generated video of humanoid cats and it had like 543,000 likes.
Isn't that
Meanwhile, I
crazy?
recently put out a pregnancy support social media reel promoting a guidebook I made that's free on my website to help provide and navigate resources for women who are pregnant, who are facing financial crisis, spiritual crisis, whatever it may be, right?
Hmm.
And does not have 543,000 likes, I'll tell you that much. But that's just a specific example. But in general, me and a lot of the guests I've had on my show who put forward social media clips about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, that kind of stuff, it doesn't go as far as stuff that promotes that stuff or stuff that is in tandem with that stuff. So, I mean, how do we
Public
market?
health education, right? That you're trying to put forth, then
Right, right.
can't
Because
find.
also,
Yeah.
now that you mentioned public health, our school system and their approach to addiction and their conversations on it, I believe, are not very effective, right? I mean, they're doing what they can to a degree. So I think social media becomes that next layer of public education, as you mentioned. So trying to market on there. So how do we reach these teenagers? Is it really about them themselves, or do we need to reach their parents and guardians? I mean, what is kind of the tactic here?
I think both, right? So we have to get it from all angles. Advocacy and policy change is a big thing. Promoting access to resources. A big one is stigma reduction, which you're kind of talking about, because of social media and what is attracting the mind, and what we're putting in the mind. But we need to definitely stigma reduction is a huge thing. Prevention and early intervention is really huge, and I think it does start at the family. But the kids are the ones that have to show up, right? But the family has to get them there because obviously the parents are leading the family. So like for us, where I work, Cenikor Foundation, we do a lot of prevention and early intervention. Um, and I feel like that's not all programs do that. We do that through like community campaigns. We do offer it in school programs. We actually go in the schools and do that. And that's like a really big deal just because that's how we can get there and don't necessarily have to go through a family. We just have like contracts with the different schools in different areas. And then that helps them to understand the risk of substance use before it escalates, um, and it encourages and just educates them on substances and the misuse of substance abuse. So just early intervention, and then that way we don't get to that point of needing to go into inpatient or outpatient programs.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is like you look at commercials, but especially movies and
Yeah.
TV shows, and what they're showing is, oh, it's not a
Mhm.
party until people are drinking or doing drugs, and they always show the
Looks
good
fun.
side, but you're not seeing that bad side. You're not seeing movies about, The Addict or how this guy destroyed his family with his addiction. You're not seeing movies about
The
that or TV
promotion
series
of
about
that.
that, right?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned the stigma, and in a previous episode with Meredith Hawcliffe on, she does the laser light acupuncture for addiction treatment, and she mentioned the idea that if she says at a party like, "No, I don't drink," they're like, "Oh, why? Do you have a problem, or why are you choosing to be sober, right?" And it's like, "No, that's just my choice." And then it's
Mhm.
like, "Okay, well, do you smoke?" It's like you have to do one or the other to be cool. If it didn't, it's a people question it. People aren't just like, "Okay, you don't drink, that's cool." There's always a why. Why don't you drink? There is like an accusation almost. It's an expectation. And I
If you're
think
not
that's
cool.
like a lot of the people I've had on my show who were addicts. It was part of the societal expectation wherever they were at, that peer pressure. I know you mentioned some influences in your life, right? It's like, okay, everyone else is doing it, and if I don't do it, I'm a loser, or I'm weird, or I'm outcasted. And, especially as a teenager, those that desire to fit in and, to compromise your morals to do so is a lot more likely than when you're older. But even as an adult, there are plenty of people who normally don't drink, but they're at a social function, so they feel like they have to drink. Otherwise, they're being rude or not fitting in. So what can you speak to that part and kind of share a little bit about the influences in your life when you were 18?
Yeah, so I think just like you're talking about, stigma reduction is going to be huge in promoting that it's okay and it's not a moral failing to not do those things. I think as far as for myself, and the way it was for me, um, I am a very empathetic person. I'm an empath, and so I've always been that way. And when I was younger, I didn't know how to cope with those emotions. Still sometimes don't, of course, but I just have better skills that I've developed over time. Obviously, being in recovery, you learn those things. And I'm older too, so I know how to say no now, right? But when I was
Right.
younger, I typically would go and sit with the people that were struggling and empathize with them. And when you're hanging out with a crowd that's not making good choices, the longer that you do that and you sit there, you tend to become the crowd, right? You're gonna eventually sit with them for too long, and then the peer pressure becomes too much, and you're gonna end up becoming what you're around. There's a saying that, show me your friends, I'll show you your future, and that's pretty
Mm.
much what happened. And I didn't choose the best five to hang around, as Tony Robbins says, find your five. Well, I found the wrong five for me. Um, and so yeah, that became my future. And so I think that that's when you're young, we're just so impressionable. And so it's really important. And that's also now, um, I had really great friends, and I played basketball and I was into sports, and I really was not the type that you would think. I say the type because, I wasn't the type that you would think would start doing drugs, but I just
Right.
ended up crossing that railroad, on the other side, and making poor choices. But ultimately it did lead me to my career, and I have such a great career, and I have such a great friend group now. So, but it doesn't always work out that way for people. I mean, with the way substances are now, one pill kills. So we don't have that choice now. We have to be very careful in the choices that we make. Um, so yeah, we really have to encourage young adults and teenagers to really be cautious and make better choices. Um, yeah.
Right. And I mentioned social media. It's a huge
Yeah.
influence because, I mean, I don't have, studies on hand, but I can tell you just from what I've observed personally, people spend a lot of screen time, on social media. Some people, it's a couple hours a day, like an
It can be
actual
very
couple of hours, which is a
manipulating.
lot.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what role does that play in terms of like you specifically with your work? Do you design social media ads that are treatment based? And if so, what
Yeah.
have you found to be successful and not successful?
Yeah, so I mean, I think oftentimes people can get like marketing wrong as far as what it can be, but in our world, we do try and like build trust and credibility. Um, we're really trying to connect people to help, and even in the world that we're in, sometimes there can be some bad apples, because we're working in a field where people um, most of us are in recovery, and sometimes we're not in recovery when we're in recovery, so
Mm.
we're trying to be transparent and have good ethics, I guess is a good way to put it. So, but basically, we're trying to connect people to help. And what I think some people often get it wrong is that we're manipulating, or maybe only focusing on admissions because we're trying to get people to come to treatment, but or maybe neglecting like cultural sensitivities and stuff like that. But really, that's not what we're trying to do. I think that what we try to do at Cenikor Foundation is really try to build connection and lead people to coming in for admission and just do it the right way. But what some people may do, or even like what you're talking about that can happen, is like neglecting diversity, and not being culturally sensitive. Um, Maybe even just, I know I've said it a couple times, but just manipulating the story of what it really may be. Like that if someone's holding a beer or something, oh, this is great, but you're not seeing on the other end that it may lead you to jail if you go and drive after. And so that's just not what our stories are about, and the influence that we're trying to have for people. And we're not profit driven. So
Yeah, I think something you kind of hinted at there was the stigma around marketing as something that is supposed to be, morally based. So, for example, if a shoe company has advertisements online, like, hey, come buy these shoes, no one says that's bad. But if an addiction treatment center is, ha running ads to get people admitted in to get help, it's like, oh, well, you're taking advantage of people who are sick to make a profit. It's interesting that kind of double standard almost that you have like it's
selling
because it is
sobriety
also a
versus,
business,
yeah,
therefore now you've compromised morally. But if you were an immoral business doing, just business, it's fine. So I think it's interesting how people react to advertisements in different fields and kind of like judge, pick and choose, if that makes sense. I feel like you kind of hinted at that a little bit, where like people feel like, oh, you should like I've heard this a lot with people who are life coaches or do addiction and substance abuse recovery. It's like, oh, well, you should do that stuff for free. Why do you charge for it? And I understand there's a balance to be had. Unfortunately, there's a lot of backlash that comes from that. But I think, like you said, being transparent, I think we need more, not just direct social media ads, but just content in general. And I
yeah,
think one of the things that me and a lot of podcasters and quote influencers who work in the field of addiction recovery, one thing we try to do more importantly than likes or than shares is consistency. Like you said, building that trust and reputation, being consistent, always putting out, that information and that content
Mhm.
for just not now, but for years to come.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yes. We do accept unfunded clients where I work. So I feel like that helps with like community engagement on our marketing, and with professionals and referrals in the community and things like that. So
Yeah, and can you just tell us a little more about Cenicor in general? Kind of, I know there's a couple different programs from,
gosh, yes, I have to like go
adults to
over.
teens
There's
to military and the different programs and levels of care.
I always have to check just because there's so many programs that we do. So we've been around for nearly 60 years. We do detox for adults, not for adolescent. For adolescent, we only do residential and aftercare with recovery support specialists up to 90 days. But for adults, we do detox, medication assisted treatment, inpatient residential partial hospitalization. Outpatient, we do virtual and in person, and then we also offer recovery housing and RSS support. We have multiple locations throughout Texas. We have two where our corporate offices. We're in Houston. We also have our adult and adolescent in Houston, and then we also have adult services in Dallas, Waco, Tyler. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting so many. Amarillo. We have one in Farmington, New Mexico. We have Corpus Christi, Texas. And then we have outpatient in Killeen, Stephenville, Houston, Decatur, Dallas. We have prevention services in San Marcos and a bunch of other like Amarillo, Tyler, Dallas, pretty sure. We have so many services. And then our recovery housing, we have Amarillo, Dallas, Houston, oh, and Waco. And then we have a women's only center in San Antonio, Texas for residential. And we take most commercial insurance, Medicaid, and we also take unfunded in the state of Texas.
Okay.
A
And
lot going
so,
on.
yeah, I know you mentioned
Pretty
a couple
much
of
you can come
different,
to Cenikor for anything, yeah.
yeah, you mentioned a couple of different programs. So ideally, anyone struggling with drug or alcohol abuse can
Yes.
go there and get some kind of treatment, depending on kind of what they want or need.
Yeah. We have like 560 beds, and the biggest thing is you don't have to have insurance to come to Cenikor.
Right. I think that's really important because a lot,
Mhm.
especially a lot of people uh, who are really far into addiction often end up homeless or in a financial struggle. So then it's really important to have that Friday. And
Yeah.
then uh, what else can you tell us about as far as like events and all that stuff? And like you kind of mentioned community quite a bit.
Yeah, so we're really big on connection and community. We have an alumni program that's huge. So anyone that's come to our program, even if you left before you completed, we let you come to any of our alumni events. And in September for Recovery Month, we're having our first big alumni event virtually. And so uh, we're sending that out and posting that on our socials here soon. And so, we just say to anybody that's listening, please come if you've ever been for the past, almost 60 years. We'd like them to come and show up for that. And then we're going to start having those quarterly. We're also having quarterly events for all of our alumni at each of our locations. We have big Texas rallies coming up at a couple of locations throughout the state of Texas, and we'll be there. So we'd love to see everybody there. Um, but yeah, and then we just did open in Farmington a psychiatric outpatient location. That's really big for us right now. I think that's some new stuff that's going on for us.
For sure, like you said, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And what would you say are some of the like biggest issues with addiction treatment in general nowadays? I know we mentioned a lot about the stigma. Is there anything else going on that is kind of really hindering addiction treatment and recovery?
I wouldn't say like hindering or going on. I know that there's a lot of policy changes happening this upcoming year, and I just um would just say to everyone, like it's going to be all right. We have a lot of changes going on in the world, and just reinforce that treatment is still accessible to everyone, and that we're going to navigate the complex healthcare and the support system together, and just reach out to us if they need help. We're going to be here, and we're excited for what's to come.
Right. I know one of the biggest concerns people have is access to care,
Mhm.
including for addiction treatment. So I think, like you said, having programs set up that are easily accessible and people can have access to. And one important thing is, like you said, is people knowing about these resources. So what can we all do to help spread these resources effectively?
Yeah, well, I think like for us, we're a resource no matter if we are the end resource. We're going to help you find a resource. So we have outreach managers throughout the state of Texas and in New Mexico. So even if we're not the end place that you land, you can call us and we're going to actually have an outreach team member contact you in the end and help find you a resource. And we are open 24/7, our admissions line. So people can actually call us at like 888 Cenicor. It's a super easy phone number. And even if like we're not the person, like I said, that ends up being where people go, we have outreach managers that help place them. And so we're going to be a resource no matter what, and help connect a person to their final piece of their journey.
Right. And just speaking of, different groups of people and stuff, and I want to mention, I do think, that all schools should be equipped with a station that has suicide
Mhm.
prevention resources, addiction prevention and intervention resources, and that should be more available.
Like 988.
Right. If it
Mhm.
even if it was like different pamphlets for different
Yeah.
organizations, such as the one you work for, or just different online resources, I think that more places should provide that, especially in schools,
Yeah.
because I think like we mentioned earlier, if I'm a teenager and I'm struggling with peer pressure or beginning to use drugs or alcohol and I don't know who to go to, I might not go talk to a guidance counselor or a teacher. And let's say the opposite side, my parents are the cause of my addiction. I can't go
Mhm.
to them. Who's my trusted adult, right? But if I was walking around school and I saw, oh, here's some phone numbers you can call and talk to someone confidentially, or here are some different organizations that can get you information. So I think that's important. That's part of why I have my show. But I also understand that, there's not a bunch of teenagers out there listening to my show who are addicted and know about that. So I think all of us have a part to play in resource provision. And I think that includes as adults, even as parents, understanding that our children or, teenagers might not want to come to us. They might want to talk to someone else. And I think
Mhm.
schools need to understand too, like, hey, they might not trust our teachers or our guidance counselors, but here are some programs that they do trust. So I think that's so important to provide those resources and have those available, And so I think that's really important. And I was just gonna say that I know that Cenikor has a big military program and is involved with that. So do y'all accept, the VA, TRICARE and other different stuff like that? Do you kind of work hand in hand, or how does that work for military members, active and veteran?
Thank you for bringing that up. I failed to mention that. Yes, we do work with, we have a lot of contracts with the VA, and we do accept TRICARE, Tri-East, Tri-West. We accept all of those at any of our programs. And we even recently, they were doing in Austin, where they were going out under the bridges and stuff to try and find specific military. Um, I can't remember what it was called exactly, but we held beds at our Austin location specific for VA. So yes, absolutely. We will accept any veterans, their families.
Awesome. And I know on your website, there's a lot about the different programs and their costs, the patient's rights and responsibilities, different, information on visitation hours on the different treatment programs and level of care. So we're gonna have that website link in the description below for people to check out. Not just those who are addicted, but more importantly, their loved ones and people who want more resources. Even if you're not addicted or have someone who's addicted, the chances of someone or meeting someone who's addicted, last I checked was like 1 in 7 people know someone who is really dealing with addiction or suicide. And so I think it's really important to have these conversations, to provide these resources, and for people to be aware of them for not just now, but for whenever they may need it in the future, because you never know when it can happen. A lot of people, and especially I featured on the show so many people talking about highly functioning alcoholics or people who use drugs. And, you know, for years, people have been blind to some of the people in their life being addicted, and now all of a sudden they're like having a crisis, like what's going on. So I think it's important to just be ready at all times and to know this. And so I also encourage everyone to share these resources.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride. Jokes and laughter fill the air, on this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, Nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, the source of great pride.